Hello everyone. This is Miss Sarah. I'm back with my next lesson. So we have 10-3. So it's 10-3, and in this section we're going to be learning about solving trig equations. So basically we're going to be solving for the angle that's attached with each trig function. So I'm going to show you a few examples. You can even go to page number 642. So let's start off with example number 1. So I have sine x plus radical 2. It's equal to negative sine x. So we're solving for this x, which is the angle in this equation. So you need to find all possibilities for the angle. How do we do it? So let me just put this limit or restriction for that. You'll see this with most of these problems. So basically what I'm asking you to do is, so find all possibilities of this angle within this range that starts from 0 and that goes all the way from 2 pi or like 360, either way. So there's a bracket for 0 degrees and 360 has parentheses. It means you're not supposed to include 360. Okay, how do we solve this? So basically idea is you need to isolate the expression, trig expression, and then we take inverse to solve for the angle. So let's just combine like terms first. Let's just add. Okay, I would add sine both sides. This becomes 2 sine x once you add. Isolate the trig function. So if I take away radical 2 and then divide by 2, this is equal to sine x. Now this is where you need to take the inverse. So take inverse of this fraction. You can look at your flashcard. You can either put in your calculator, whichever way it's easier, just do that. Alright, so now this is something you need to watch out for. You do not have to type in the negative in your calculator. You just have to look at the number itself. If you type it in your calculator, so radical 2 over 2 for sine function, it would be 45 degrees. But that's not all. That's not my answer. Now, based off this negative, you need to determine what quadrant it could be in. Since sine function is negative, means sine could be negative in third, or it could be negative in fourth quadrant. So you actually have to find these angles in these two quadrants. So if it's third quadrant, you know 45 is not possible in third quadrant. So basically the 45 might be the reference angle. But how would you find the actual angle that goes with third quadrant? So basically it would be from here to here. So basically you would add 180 degrees to 45. So your angle in third quadrant would be 225. So same thing if it's fourth quadrant. So fourth quadrant means this 45 is the reference angle, which is this part. But how would you find the actual angle, which is from here to here? So what I would do is 360 minus 45. So my answer is 315. All right. So or another, I would say a shortcut. If your angle is in first quadrant, then we don't do anything. So don't do anything. That would stay the same. If it's second quadrant, we would do 100 and minus that angle. If it's third quadrant, we do 100 plus that angle. And if it's fourth quadrant, we do 360 minus the angle. All right, that's how we do it. So let me show you one more example. I have example number 2, which is 3. Tangent square x minus 1 is equal to 0. Isolate the trig function. So I would add 1 and divide by 3. Becomes this. How would you get rid of that square? So I would do square root both sides. Square root both sides. So this becomes tangent x. And I hope you remember, if you take square root, you have to have plus and minus in there. So this would become radical 1 over radical 3, which you need to rationalize. This becomes plus and minus. So I would times it by radical 3, radical 3. So later on it would be this. Okay, time to take inverse, tangent inverse. So if I take tangent inverse of this, it's going to be, again, you can type it in your calculator or you can look at your flashcard, whichever way. All right, once you have that, again, don't forget to ignore the sign. Just ignore the sign, type in the number and figure out the angle. Okay, now time to figure out the actual angle. So if you look closely, I have two answers. I have plus radical 3 over 3 and negative radical 3 over 3. Let's just figure out options for plus or positive radical 3 over 2. 3 over 3. So tangent is positive in first quadrant and third quadrant. So if it's positive and if it's first quadrant, yeah, 30 would work. So that's going to be my first answer. If it's third quadrant, remember we added to 180. So my answer would be 210. Okay, now let's say if I'm looking at negative radical 3 over 3. Okay, so tangent is negative in second quadrant and fourth quadrant. So in second quadrant, we take away the reference angle. So it's 180 minus 30. So my answer would be 150. Fourth quadrant, so it's 360 minus 30, which is 330. Here you go. So that's how we do it. So again, don't forget, you need to find all possibilities for the missing angle. One more example. This is example number 3. So I have cotangent x times it by cosine square x, and it's equal to 2 cosine x. Alright. So for something like this, now some of you guys might gonna think, let's just divide by cosine both sides. Keep in mind, we do not divide by the variable, because if you divide by a variable, basically you're eliminating one solution of that problem. You can't do that. So instead, what I would do is, I would move this cosine, let me pick a different color, so this, I'll just move it to this side and make it equal to 0. So I have cotangent x times it by cosine square x and minus 2 cosine x. And this whole thing is equal to 0. Greatest common factor, x factoring, there's a lot of stuff you could do. So what I see is I could do greatest common factor for something like this. Take out something they both have in common. They both have one cosine in common. So let's factor that out. So I have cotangent, oh, hold on. Is it cotangent? Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Gotta go back and fix something. This is not cosine on the other side. My mistake, guys. I apologize for that. It's not cosine on this side. This is cotangent. Let me fix that. This is cotangent. This is also cotangent. So if I bring this to this side, that's cotangent. Okay? Alright, so what do they have in common? They have cotangent in common. So I would factor out cotangent. So this would leave you with cosine square x minus 2. Alright, basically what I've just done is just factor out the expression. So once you get the factors, you just have to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So first factor, cotangent x is equal to 0. Second factor, cosine square x minus 2 is equal to 0. Solve each one separately. First one, there's nothing you could do. You can take inverse right away. So cotangent inverse of 0 would be 90 degrees. Again, flashcard, calculator, whichever one. Okay, now, for something like this, anytime your answer is a quadrantal angle, there's nothing much you could do. So 90 degree would be just only answer. Alright, and this one here, cotangent square x minus 2. So I'll just add 2 first. Cosine square x is equal to 2. Take square root. Cosine x is equal to plus and minus radical 2. Take inverse. Now if you take inverse of radical 2, which is going to be, it's plus and minus 1.12, I guess. Okay, now if you type it in your calculator, there's going to be math error. So it means you cannot have cosine bigger than 1. So that's not possible. Basically, this equation just going to give you, there will be no solution for this equation. So that's pretty much all we do. So basically, anytime you see any equation, combine like terms, factor it out, and then just solve each factor separately and look for all possibilities. And yeah, this is all. So that's all for today. And if you have any question, please comment and I'll answer that question. Thank you, guys.